Welcome to Spotlight Documentaries, our series on young leaders and coalitions of the White House Drug-Free Communities program. We're here today with Detective Melody Quinn with the St. Louis County Police Department. Detective, you've been instrumental in the opioid prevention initiative of the Bureau of Drug Enforcement and a huge part of the drug prevention program with the Alliance for Healthy Communities in Parkway. So thank you so much for your leadership. What inspired you to become a leader in the fight against the addiction and drug epidemic? And what are your takeaways and messages after years of experience in the field?
So, really, my fascination, I don't know if that's the right word, it sounds kind of odd, but um, I became really passionate, I guess is probably the better way to say it, about substance use disorder, really because of experiences that I had in my personal life with my family, and the way it affected not just me, but also my children. And even beyond my core family, with my ex-husband's family and my parents and siblings and things like that, and how, just one person's addiction can affect generations.
Yeah.
And I have a background in psychology, and disruptions of the brain have been something that is really fascinating to me. And I felt like there was space to make changes there, specifically in regards to the way that police officers work with individuals who are particularly vulnerable with substance use disorder. Um, so when I was given the opportunity to put in for this position, I jumped on it, uh, and have run with it since 2019. So it's been quite a ride so far, with no intentions of stopping anytime soon. Um, and I guess the main takeaways that I've taken, that I've had with regards to where we're at, is there's still a lot of work to do, still a lot of work to be done, still a lot of people struggling, um, a lot of minds to be changed about origins and why this disease is what it is, and um, a lot of stigma to turn around, really.
Right. Can you tell us more about the opioid prevention initiative and what specifically you do to prevent opioid use?
Sure. So the Opioid Prevention Initiative started back in 2014. Um, our drug force is a conglomerate. It's called a strike force, and we are the 19th strike force in the United States, here in St. Louis. And it has kind of a hodgepodge of all the federal alphabet soup, if you will, within one unit. And it's in partnership with HIDA, which is the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas, which is a government entity in and of itself. And they were the ones who felt that working on the prevention and education side of things would also be a benefit to the enforcement, right? So when I took the position over in 2019, I really valued that prevention and education. I really do think that that is where we're going to make the most impact with substance use disorder for the future. And the Opioid Prevention Initiative allows me, through that position, I run a coalition of my own. Not only I'm on Alliance for Healthy Communities, but I'm also on 7 other coalitions. But the one that I run is called St. Louis Crush Community Resources United Stop Heroin. And that really allows me to get into the community and be a lot more boots on the ground, and offering resources and education and treatment opportunities that a lot of individuals in especially high risk areas don't know are there or don't have easy access to, and we are able to bring them to that. So it's a really great opportunity to see how drugs are affecting people right there in the community in real time. Um, so because of that, we do a lot of outreach. We do almost monthly uh, an event that we call walk and talks, where we go to the hardest hit neighborhoods in St. Louis, and we literally walk the streets with resource bags on our backs, and we talk to anybody who's willing about substance use disorder. What does that look like? Do they know anybody who's struggling with substance use disorder? Are they struggling with a substance use disorder? We just have honest conversations, give them bags if they want, they're free, and give them as many as they want. Sometimes we've had people take 7 or 8 because they live in a home where there are several people who are struggling with substance use disorder. And we've actually gotten quite a few people into treatment through those walk and talks. And we've gotten a couple of unhoused individuals into housing and on their way into recovery, which is pretty cool. We also operate a big fair once a spring every year. And we move it around St. Louis, and it's called the You Are Not Alone Fair, or YANA for short. And we bring resources and treatment, and we try to fill the gaps of understanding with substance use disorder, because somebody or family member that may be helping somebody who's struggling with substance use disorder doesn't really need to know what the disease is or why the disease is, but they need to know how to handle, you know, how to get through the justice system, how to get insurance, how to find clothing or childcare or transportation. And a lot of those things are really not understood uh, in this population, because they're struggling with something that alters their brain from really having the ability to reason. Um, so it's been very, very popular, very successful doing those kinds of things. And then this year, we're actually this fall doing what we're calling a LIT Summit, Leaders in Training. And we are starting with middle school students and trying to create prevention leaders within school districts, especially the hard hit ones up in North County, and have the students become the prevention leaders, within their schools. So it's been pretty awesome to be able to do the initiative in all these different ways. And I'm kind of all over the place.
What are some of the biggest obstacles to drug prevention that you see, and how can we overcome them?
Stigma, I would say, is probably the biggest obstacle, because a lot of people still believe that substance use disorder is a moral issue, that somebody's a bad person because they're choosing a drug. And they don't really understand the science behind the brain. And a lot of times there's people who don't really want to understand the science of the brain, which can be tragic, because it creates a distrust of a community that's really struggling. And we need to start building trust and building care for these individuals. So I would say stigma is probably the number one. And the number two is that we just don't have enough resources for all the people who are struggling. And we need to talk about it more. We need to create legislation that better serves the community. And we need to educate more. We have a lot of people going into schools and educating students, 7th and 8th grade, which is great, but there's just not enough people to make enough impact with all the students that are, going through the education system, especially after COVID. So we just need more people and more resources.
Right. And can
Did I
you share?
answer all of that?
Yes, yes. And can you share stories of some
Okay.
youth leaders with the Alliance that you have worked with and how they've impacted their communities?
Well, I've gotten to see you a lot doing your leadership roles, which is pretty cool. I would say that you're probably one of the most uh, energetic, forward-thinking kids I've gotten the joy to just watch.
Thank you.
Not that we've gotten to work with each other personally, other than this right now, but it's been really cool to see what you do. And there are students like you, like in Rockwood, and I'm going to forget her name. There was a senior last year that was doing a lot of good work with Rockwood and CPIP. Um, and there's so many kids out there. And even Jefferson County Drug Prevention Coalition now has a student-led prevention group, and they're starting to create prevention campaigns in the Jefferson County schools, which is awesome, highly needed in that area. So it's really cool to see kids being empowered to make change. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to do the Lit conference here in St. Louis County, was to get more kids engaged and excited about making a difference. Um, I think your guys' generation is really going to be game changers for our culture, because you guys have this kind of ferocity behind your desire to see things be equitable. Um, and I think that's important.
Right. And what steps can we take on social on the in the social media arena to stop the distribution of drugs?
Well, one thing I think, and this is a more legislative thing, I think we need to legislate um, restrictions about what social media apps can and cannot do, i.e., Snapchat um, is highly privatized in the way you can send something, and as long as somebody else doesn't screenshot it, that picture is gone, technically speaking. Now it's kept somewhere, but it's not kept in a place where we're easily accessible, even for law enforcement. In fact, groups like Snapchat are very anti-law enforcement. So they are, even in cases where we have like um, verifiable child pornography and things like that, or drug sales, drug trafficking. Um, we don't have access to get any of those records because they're not willing to work with law enforcement. So I think legislating social media is probably the number one thing we need to do, making sure that our kids are safe online. Um, and I think giving kids more power and empowerment to say when something doesn't feel okay, um, allowing them to have that space to talk about it and not feel uh, judged.
Right.
Because when we start judging our kids and telling them they don't know what they're talking about, then they lose their voice. And I think it's important to give kids a voice. So I think kids can really turn social media around just by utilizing it for positive and brave messaging um, through their social media apps, which will kind of, I think, downturn some of the negative messaging that is getting pushed out quite often through those kinds of apps.
Right. And what are some of the things that all of us in the community can do to stop the fentanyl crisis?
Well, I think that first and foremost is just talking about it more, being willing to say it does happen in my area, it does happen at my school, and acknowledging that just because, you know, Lindbergh School District or Rockwood or Parkway has drugs within their schools doesn't mean they're bad schools. It just means that we need to be more proactive in how we handle those situations. But by ignoring that problem, we're not creating change. We're just kind of pushing it under the rug. And then with a lot of school districts that I work with, not Parkway, but a lot of school districts that I work with, um, they would prefer to just cover it up and say, not here, not at our school. And then kids die. So I think it's much more important that we say, yeah, you know what, this can happen anywhere. It doesn't have discrimination. You know, drugs don't discriminate. It can affect anybody. It doesn't matter what race or religion or um, financial background or education a person has. Anybody can become addicted and anybody can have a problem. So we just need to be more honest, open, and communicate more, especially with parents, because I think parents kind of get um, sideswiped when something traumatic happens to their child. It's like they never knew. They didn't even know it was a possibility because they were in a good school district, or, you know, they live in a nice neighborhood. So it doesn't happen there. But the truth is, it happens everywhere. Uh, I think if we talked more, we educated more, we would be a lot more effective at turning the tide of the epidemic.
That makes sense. Thank you so much, Detective Quinn, for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.